The last night, no one spoke to her. "Women can't be SEALs," they whispered. The next morning, she packed her bags and left. Victory for the old guard, until 3 days later when she made that impossible shot and the brass casing glinted in the air with the number 214. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story of hidden strength resonates with you, consider subscribing. We share stories every week that shatter assumptions and reveal true power. The mist hung heavier than usual over Coronado Beach that night. Silence reigned in the barracks of the Naval Special Warfare Training Center. You could only hear the monotonous sound of the ocean. But for Staff Sergeant Thalia Vera Cruz, this silence was the culmination of 2 weeks of isolation. With her compact build, 27-year-old Thalia was the only woman among 24 male candidates. Her dark hair was pulled back in military regulation, with no signs of fatigue on her face. But in her eyes was that cold stare you'd only see in highly experienced operators. Vera Cruz, Chief Instructor Garrett Blackwood's voice echoed down the corridor. He never used her rank. This was part of the 2-week humiliation campaign. When Thalia emerged from her room, she met the stares of the other candidates. Lieutenant Jake Viper Harrison smiled. "Finally going to be smart and quit," he whispered to his buddy. The next morning at 0430, Thalia stepped onto that familiar beach for the last time. She finished the obstacle course right in the middle as always, 2 minutes 47 seconds. Neither fastest nor slowest, perfect average performance. "Same old Vera Cruz," Blackwood shook his head. 2 minutes 47 seconds, above standards. Average isn't enough for SEALs. Thalia said nothing. Her eyes were fixed on the target boards. Today was the marksmanship test, her last chance. During shooting training, Thalia took her standard M4 rifle. While others adjusted their sights, she made only 3 quick adjustments. She didn't use measurement tools. Elliot Spider Martinez noticed this. "Viper," he whispered to Harrison. "Vera Cruz isn't using the sight adjustment tools." "Probably doesn't know how to use them," Harrison grinned. When targets were revealed, Thalia's grouping came out perfectly average. None in the bullseye, none outside the target. As if she was deliberately trying to be mediocre. That afternoon, Lieutenant Commander Nathan Warwick met Thalia in his office. Voluntary withdrawal forms sat on the desk. "Staff Sergeant Vera Cruz," Warwick's voice was tired. "We've observed you for 14 days. Your physical performance isn't sufficient. This program isn't for everyone." Thalia looked at the forms, then into Warwick's eyes. Something flashed in that cold stare for a moment. Even Warwick tensed inwardly. Without saying anything, she took the pen, signed her name, and placed the pen exactly where it had been. "Do you understand what this decision means?" Warwick asked. "Yes, sir." "Would you like to make a statement for the record?" "No, sir." She executed a perfect about-face and left the room silently. 3 days later, a special demonstration was being held at Coronado for Pentagon officials. High-profile visitors, 2 generals, several foreign military observers, and defense industry representatives. As Chief Blackwood presented the program, he said, "What you'll witness today is the pinnacle of modern special forces training. Our snipers can hit targets with precision previous generations couldn't even imagine." The demonstration proceeded as planned. Candidates demonstrated breaching techniques, close-quarters combat procedures, and finally, the main event, precision shooting. Targets were placed up to 1,800 meters away. The farthest was beyond the range of standard rifles, requiring special sniper equipment and extraordinary skill. When the shooting demonstration reached its climax, the spotter at the firing line suddenly tensed. He hurriedly adjusted his high-powered scope. "Sir," his voice was tight with controlled alarm. "Movement in the impact zone, 2,200 meters out." Blackwood abandoned his presentation mid-sentence and grabbed the spotter scope. When he magnified the image through the lens, he froze. Thalia Vera Cruz. She was lying prone on a rocky outcrop, custom rifle against her shoulder. Her position was textbook perfect, her body completely motionless despite the wind. Her eye was pressed to an advanced scope, finger resting lightly on the trigger guard. "Ceasefire!" Ceasefire on all stations. Blackwood's voice cracked with panic. The range safety officer activated emergency protocols. Red lights flashed as sirens wailed. Pentagon officials in the observation bunker exchanged worried glances. Warwick grabbed his radio. "Security team to Eastern Ridge Sector 4. Unauthorized personnel in impact zone." But before the words fully left his mouth, Thalia fired. The sound reached them a full second after they saw the muzzle flash. The high-velocity round split the air like thunder. Through his scope, Blackwood tracked the impossible shot. The bullet passed between two demonstration targets and hit a small object he hadn't even noticed was there. A miniature camera on a nearly invisible stand exploded into electronic components. Then came the detail that would haunt him for years. The brass casing ejecting from Thalia's rifle in perfect slow motion, tumbling through the air, catching sunlight as it fell to the rocky ground beside her. Even at this distance, he could see something was etched on its surface. Absolute silence covered the range. Only the gentle wail of distant sirens could be heard. Then chaos erupted. Security teams rushed to vehicles, radios squawked with conflicting orders, VIPs were hurriedly escorted toward the main compound. Blackwood remained motionless, the spotter scope still at his eye. He watched Thalia calmly collect her brass, pack her rifle with practiced efficiency, and disappear over the ridge before response teams could reach her position. What the hell just happened? One of the Pentagon officials demanded an explanation from Warwick. Before he could formulate an answer, a black government SUV with darkened windows and no markings screeched to a halt at the observation bunker entrance. A stern woman in a charcoal suit emerged. Despite her civilian attire, her bearing was unmistakably military. She flashed credentials that made Warwick stand at attention despite outranking her visible insignia. "Lieutenant Commander Warwick, Chief Instructor Blackwood," her voice was clipped and authoritative. "I'm Special Advisor Davis, Department of Defense. We need to talk. Now." As they walked toward the secure briefing room, Blackwood noticed additional black vehicles arriving. Personnel in similar nondescript attire were establishing a perimeter around the demonstration area with practiced efficiency. "Ma'am, we have an unauthorized shooter on the premises," Warwick began as the briefing room door closed behind them. "No, Commander," Davis corrected. "What you have is a highly authorized operator completing her assigned mission. Stand down your security response. Staff Sergeant Vera Cruz is operating under direct authority of the Secretary." Blackwood placed the spent brass casing he'd retrieved from the firing line on the table between them. The number 214 was laser etched on its surface with military precision. "Would you care to explain this?" he asked, struggling to keep his voice level. Davis glanced at the casing, her expression softening slightly. "Staff Sergeant Vera Cruz wasn't here to join your program, Chief," she explained. "She was here to evaluate it." The briefing room fell silent as Davis's words settled over them. Warwick slowly lowered himself into a chair, his composure finally cracking. Blackwood remained standing, the brass casing still between his fingers. "Evaluate us," he repeated flatly. "For what purpose?" Davis activated a secure tablet, placing it on the table between them. Images appeared on the screen, surveillance footage from the training facility, performance metrics, behavioral analyses. With growing disbelief, Blackwood recognized footage from supposedly secure training sessions, including underwater exercises and classroom discussions that should have been inaccessible to anyone outside the program. "The Secretary has concerns about our special warfare training protocols," Davis explained. "Specifically, whether they're still producing operators capable of adapting to emerging threats and unconventional warfare scenarios." She swiped to another screen showing Thalia's unredacted file. The photograph was the same, but the woman described in the text was unrecognizable from the recruit they thought they knew. "Staff Sergeant Thalia Vera Cruz is part of a classified program known only to 7 people within the Department of Defense. Her unit operates without official designation, engaging high-value targets that conventional special forces cannot approach due to political or logistical constraints. The file detailed operations across 17 countries, some officially designated as allies. threat neutralization, asset recovery, intelligence gathering in denied areas. The list continued for pages. "The number on the casing," Blackwood said, placing it carefully on the table. "We keep track," Davis replied. "She doesn't. Each number represents an operation authorized at the highest levels for targets that posed imminent threats to national security." Warwick stared at the brass, processing implications that rewrote everything he thought he understood. 214 confirmed eliminations? Davis nodded. The highest count among active operators. Her methodology is distinctive. One shot, one brass casing retained as mission verification. Traditional after-action reports would create an unacceptable paper trail. "Why send her here?" Blackwood demanded. "Why put her through a program she never intended to complete?" "Because your program is failing, Chief Instructor." Davis's voice hardened. "For decades, naval special warfare has selected for a specific type of operator, predominantly male, with specific physical attributes and psychological profiles. The question is whether those selection criteria still produce the capabilities we need for modern conflicts." She gestured to the tablet where footage showed Calloway and others mocking Thalia in the mess hall. Another clip captured Blackwood deliberately setting her up to fail with technical questions beyond the curriculum. Staff Sergeant Vera Cruz was instructed to perform at approximately 70% capacity, enough to meet minimum standards but never excel. She was to observe training methods, assess instructor biases, and evaluate whether candidates were being prepared for the actual threats they would face. One of Davis's personnel brought the remains of the object Thalia had shot into the briefing room, the remnants of a sophisticated surveillance hub containing backup copies of all the footage collected during her evaluation period. "She didn't need to place these devices," Davis continued. "Your security protocols are so outdated and your blind spots so predictable that she was able to compromise your entire surveillance network on her second day." The implications settled over the room like a physical weight. The program they had devoted their careers to, the selection process they had defended as essential, had been thoroughly infiltrated and found wanting by a single operator they had dismissed from the outset. "What happens now?" Warwick asked, his voice hollow. "Now we rebuild," Davis replied, starting with a full briefing from Staff Sergeant Vera Cruz herself. 30 minutes later, the briefing room door opened again. Thalia entered, now dressed in unmarked tactical gear rather than the training uniform they were accustomed to seeing her in. She carried herself differently. Gone was the deliberately underwhelming presence, replaced by the confident bearing of someone accustomed to command. She took a seat at the head of the table, the position Blackwood normally occupied. The reversal of authority was unmistakable. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying the weight of authority they had never granted her, "let's discuss the findings of my evaluation." She opened a laptop displaying a comprehensive assessment broken down by training category, instructor effectiveness, and candidate potential. The level of detail was staggering. Notes on individual instructors' teaching methodologies, psychological profiles of each candidate, and security vulnerabilities throughout the facility. "Your program has strengths and critical weaknesses," she stated without emotion. "You prepare for known threats while ignoring emerging ones. You select for attributes that worked in the past rather than those needed for the future." She turned to Blackwood. "Chief, you're an exceptional tactical instructor, but your biases create blind spots that compromise operational security. You dismissed my technical knowledge rather than questioning why a supposedly average candidate possessed it. In a real-world scenario, that oversight could compromise an entire mission." The briefing continued for over an hour, each point documented with irrefutable evidence. When she finally closed her laptop, the room remained silent, the weight of her assessment hanging in the air. Blackwood, humbled but still processing, finally spoke. "The brass casing," he said quietly. 214. Is that accurate?" Something shifted in Thalia's expression, the first crack in her professional veneer. "I don't keep count," she answered. "They do." "Each one authorized at the highest level? Each one necessary?" "Necessary," she corrected. "The count isn't a point of pride, Chief. It's a wait. A moment of understanding passed between them, not as evaluator and candidate, but as soldiers who had made difficult choices in service to their country. For the first time, Blackwood saw her clearly, recognizing the 1,000-yard stare that no amount of training could produce. "The incident at the pool," Blackwood said, recalling Calloway's interference during the drown-proofing exercise. "You could have drowned." "The risk was calculated," she replied simply. "I needed to observe how your program handles deliberate sabotage among candidates. The results were concerning." 6 months later, the same misty beach that had greeted Thalia on her first day hosted a new class of candidates. The physical training looked similar on the surface, the same punishing exercises, the same demanding standards. But subtle differences permeated every aspect of the program. From a distance, Thalia observed as Blackwood ran the course, his teaching methods transformed. Where he once relied exclusively on physical intimidation and conformity, he now incorporated problem-solving scenarios and adaptive thinking challenges. Among the candidates struggling through the surf, there was more diversity, including 2 women giving their all alongside the men. The most surprising change stood beside her at the observation point. Recruit Calloway, now wearing instructor insignia himself. After the revelation of Thalia's true purpose, he had requested to remain with the program, working directly with her to implement reforms based on her findings. "They still don't believe me when I tell them about your first day here," he said, watching the candidates complete their morning evolution. "Good," she replied. "The best operators are the ones no one sees coming." In the months following her evaluation, the Naval Special Warfare Training Program had undergone a comprehensive overhaul. Traditional physical standards remained rigorous, but new emphasis was placed on cognitive flexibility, technological adaptation, and unconventional problem-solving. Her secure device vibrated with an incoming message. She checked the screen, her expression shifting subtly as she read the encoded text. "New assignment?" Calloway asked, recognizing the look. She nodded once, offering no details. Some boundaries remained uncrossed, even after months of working together. "How long will you be gone?" "Uncertain," she replied, which they both understood meant she couldn't say or perhaps didn't know herself. As she walked toward the waiting helicopter that had appeared on the pad without prior notification, Blackwood emerged from the training course with his candidates. Seeing Thalia's departure preparations, he brought the group to a halt. Without prompting, he and the other instructors rendered a silent salute, not required by protocol, but offered in genuine respect. Thalia returned the gesture before boarding the aircraft, the door sliding closed behind her. As the helicopter lifted off, carrying her toward another mission that would never appear in any report, she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The program she'd helped transform would continue evolving long after her departure. The candidates who successfully completed it would never know the full story of how their training had changed, only that they were being prepared for threats beyond those their predecessors had faced. Inside her gear bag, carefully stored in a custom case, lay the brass casing from the rifle shot that had revealed her true purpose 6 months earlier. Beside it, 214 others, each marked with a number, each representing a mission that could never be acknowledged. The helicopter banked sharply, heading out over the Pacific. Below, the training facility receded into the distance, the candidates resuming their exercises on the misty beach. From this height, they appeared tiny and insignificant, but Thalia knew better. Among them might be the next generation of operators who would eventually take her place, carrying forward a legacy that would never bear their names. Her secure device activated again, displaying the operational parameters for her next assignment. She committed the details to memory, then cleared the screen, her mind already shifting to the mission ahead. The helicopter continued east toward the rising sun and whatever awaited her beyond the horizon. In a world of shadows and brass casings, Thalia Vera Cruz moved forward as she always had, one mission at a time, counting nothing except the difference she made in silence.